What is up, YouTube? It is Doc here, Docky Style Gaming, and I am back at it again with another GodFall video for you all today, and it is finally here, the Exalted Update. It has dropped on all platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, and the Epic Game Store. So much new content has now come to GodFall, and so many new players are finally about to get their hands on GodFall. So I thought, what better than to make a brand new beginner's guide for all of the new content that's coming into the game, but for all of the new players that are finally going to get their hands on GodFall. Now, luckily, I've made a lot of guides and breakdowns on the channel already, so most of those I'll leave at the end of the video in my GodFall playlist if you want to check out, but I do want to give some tips and tricks to starting out in the game and even give you a quick beginner build at the very end of the video so that you can get started on your journey and start leveling up and getting some better gear faster. So, like I always say, without wasting any more of y'all's time, let's hop straight into this video and straight into this guide. So, first and foremost, which I feel like everybody should definitely do, returning and new players, is run through the entire story mode. With the Exalted Update, we have a brand new enhanced story mode with all new cinematics, and unlocking some of your Valorplate shards require you to complete the Zamora boss fight and the Macros boss fight, which are story-specific bosses. So definitely run through the story mode. I know full game owners and Challenger Edition owners can boost their characters to max level, but honestly, there's a lot of tutorial stuff that you don't want to miss, so I highly recommend you play through the entire campaign and don't miss any of that. Once you beat the campaign though, your next mission is to start unlocking additional skill points and getting some much better gear. And the best place to do that and main place to do that is Dreamstones. Dreamstones is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your upgradable resources. You can upgrade everything at the forge, from leveling up your gear to enchanting the rarity, making it even higher, and lifting curses and so much more. But on top of that, every time you complete a higher level Dreamstone, you'll unlock another skill point that you can use on your skill grid to increase the power of your Valorplate. While running through Dreamstones, it'll also help you level up and get higher gear that'll match your level. I've gone through all of Dreamstones because there's actually quite a bit to get into in a separate video. Again, I've broke it all down, so I'll leave a link to that at the end of the video or in the video description for you to check out as well. Now, once you've ran through Dreamstones, leveled up some of your items, and got the gear that you want, now it's time to get into some of the in-game content. All content that drops very unique pieces of loot, most of which you can only get in those game modes. We have 3 different versions of Towers of Trials, which are the places you go to test your metal. If you think your build is up to snuff, Towers of Trials will let you know very fast if it is or isn't. We have our basic Towers of Trials, which is just a good place to test your build. Then you have the Ascended Towers of Trials, which is a great place to also test your build and see how strong you truly are. While also running through Ascended Towers of Trials, there are some brand new loot types that come from there, such as dual primary weapons and primal weapons, which are stronger versions than normal items in game. And then, of course, with the Exalted Update, we have the brand new Exalted Towers of Trials, which adds a whole new type of loot as well, triple primary stat weapons, and then a whole new level of difficulty to the Towers of Trials. If you're a returning player who is struggling on Ascended Towers of Trials, you might not be ready for Exalted. But if you want to give it a shot, by all means, go ahead and see how it goes. Now, along with the 3 different Towers of Trials game modes, we also have another game mode that was added with the Fire and Darkness expansion, the Lightbringer game mode. This is a escort survival type of game mode where you have to escort the light and protect it while also doing some side objectives that also grant you some exclusive loot. Again, I've gone over all of Lightbringer game mode in a separate video, so check that out in the playlist at the end. Now, moving on to the newest game mode that was just added with the update today is the 6-player Spirit Realm game mode. It is a open free realm in-game mode that lets you explore all the realms in both the Spirit plane and normal plane while having multiple objectives to get, with a bunch of brand new loot, mid-bosses and main bosses, and some raid-like mechanics to unlock certain encounters, and of course some hidden things that you can find as well. I did a brief breakdown on it yesterday, but of course I will be doing a full breakdown of it a little later on the channel this week. So with the story mode, Dreamstones, and the multiple in-game modes, what more is there in GodFall? a whole lot more. There's still the builds, which is honestly the biggest part of Godfall and what honestly is probably going to bring most of y'all back to the game. There is so much loot to obtain in this game, and build variety is insane, especially with the addition of Valorplate shards. The builds are about to start getting even crazier, and builds are very, very important. This is something that a lot of people gloss over with their breakdowns in Godfall, but honestly, builds are very, very important. From augment placements on your augment constellation to skill grid points that you put into your skill grid, all enhance your builds and add additional abilities. So with that, I'm going to give y'all a brief rundown on builds in general. Now, luckily with the new Exalted update, we have a much more streamlined system so that we can check out all of our builds. But in my opinion, the most important thing that a lot of people gloss over when it comes to builds is your augment constellation. So I'm going to go over this briefly just so that players can know what to look out for. Now, augments and augment constellations are typically what set most Valorplates apart. On top of the brand new Valorplate shards, that helps too. But placement of augments is crucial because that's how you can get the most out of certain augments. So for example, I have an augment that's dead set in the middle of my augment constellation called Carnage. You get 5% extra crit damage for every 20 might on adjacent augments. And since Carnage is in the middle, and every augment around it is feeding right into the middle, every augment is adjacent. So there are might augments, which are the red ones, there are vitality augments, and spirit augments, which are blue. But if you look at the secondary stats, you can see that I have plus might on them as well, because when you upgrade your gear, you can add additional secondary stats, thereby applying might to every piece of gear that I have, meaning that all of this might feeds into Carnage, and if we look at the plus total percentage, I now have plus 170% additional crit hit damage because of the placement of Carnage and all of the adjacent augments. Now that's just an example, but there are a lot of augments in the game that utilize things like this, and augment placement is very crucial for getting the most out of augments and the most out of your builds. So whenever you get some of the new augments, definitely pay attention to them and definitely pay attention to where you place them. And then of course, lastly, another very important thing to pay attention to are the skill grids and skill points. This is where you're going to be unlocking most of your new abilities, your timing attacks, weapon attacks, shield throws, different takedowns, recovery mechanics, and so much more. Each skill has 5 different levels that you can feed into, and each level gives you something new, whether it's additional bonus stats or additional abilities. So just like your augments and augment constellations, be mindful of where you put those skill points at on your skill grid. And then finally, don't forget about your Ascension levels. Now, once you hit max level in the game, that is not the end-all be-all of your leveling. Once you hit the max level, you will start earning Ascension levels, which will give you bonus stats for all of your Valorplates, and for every 25 levels, you unlock a brand new Ascension ability or power. I'm always earning Ascension level points, and I completely forget to use them sometimes, so pay attention to those Ascension levels once you hit max rank. Now, like I mentioned a bit earlier, we're going to be taking a very simple look at a gear loadout that will be useful for just about every Valorplate. Now, of course, this is not the end-all be-all, but all of these items are pretty easily obtainable throughout the main campaign and don't require you to actually do any of the in-game modes to get them. And like I mentioned a bit earlier with the Forge, any purple rarity item can be upgraded to a legendary, meaning you could get more damage and better stats out of them as well. But I just wanted to put together a simple build that was pretty easily obtainable that would get most players through the base campaign, and that don't have dedicated loot drops. So all of these pieces of gear can drop from anywhere in the game. So while you're farming and grinding, be sure to look out for these pieces of gear, or depending on where you are in the story, if you haven't beat the DLC, you're going to have the shopkeeper, one is named Zanu, that is going to be on the right side of your forge, but if you have beat the Fire and Darkness expansion, you're going to get another shopkeeper named Saba, who has a bunch of different items for you to pick up via in-game resources. Nothing in this game actually costs real cash, so everything that you get will be earnable through in-game currency, which is very, very easy to pick up. Now, the coolest thing about this is that every time you complete a Dreamstone or every time you complete a story mission, the shops will reset. So for some of you newer players that are going through the main campaign, like I said, you probably won't have Saba right now. You will have Zanu on the opposite side. But every time you complete a mission, be sure to go to one of your shopkeepers and check out that loot. But moving back to the actual build and the gear that we're rocking, first we have the Seath, which is for some additional crit and damage. And then in the second slot, we have the Azurite Silencer, which is for some additional health whenever you defeat an element inflicted enemy. For the amulet, we have the Amulet of the Betrayer, which is good for a lot of newer players or just squishier players that don't want to die. Pretty much whenever you go to 0, instead of killing you, it'll make you invulnerable for 5 seconds. Now, this does have a cooldown, so this won't work multiple times, but on every death, the cooldown will reset. In the charm slot, we have the Lion Talisman. Now, with the Exalted Update, it did take a bit of a nerf, but it's still not too bad. And it's great for getting your weapon technique up and dealing some additional damage. Weapon techniques are crucial for dealing some fast damage and sometimes unblockable damage. Next, we have the Eye of the Dragon, which is whenever you defeat an enemy inflicted with an element, you will gain overhealth. And your weapon techniques inflict element, which is very, very useful to have on any build. In the second ring slot, we have the Dusklord Signet, which exposes enemy weak points whenever you inflict an element. And again, if you're using weapon techniques, you're pretty much always inflicting elements, which means additional damage. And again, weapon technique, potentially unblockable damage. Now for the Banner and Life Stones, we have the Archon's Tear, which is for some additional crit to take advantage of the Seath, and the Lion Talisman. And then we have the Mesa's Banderole, which is for, again, some more crit and banner overhealth. Again, all of these are very easily obtainable and can be upgraded to legendary, all of the epic ones at least. Now, every time I mentioned element, I was talking about the element. Each weapon type has an element. There's multiple in game, and I have broke them all down in my original Everything You Need to Know video. So I'll be leaving a link to that right here if you want to check that out. That goes over a lot more in depth of the broader terms of GodFall. But for the most part, this should be a pretty good starting point for a lot of new players. So Xbox players and Steam players, welcome to GodFall. If you have any questions about anything, definitely leave them in the comment section below because I will answer as many of them as I can, or be sure to check out my GodFall playlist because I might have already answered them. And of course, if you aren't or haven't, definitely follow me on my Twitch channel. I will be streaming this potentially right now as you're watching it, and I'll be answering questions from just about everyone and playing with anyone who wants to squad up. And then lastly, definitely be sure to join the Discord too. We have guides, builds, LFGs for all platforms, and so much more for GodFall, other games I cover on the channel, and some games that I don't. So with that, I am going to wrap it up. Thank you all again for watching like always. Again, welcome all of the new players to GodFall. I hope to catch some of y'all in the Discord, matchmaking, or potentially playing with y'all sometime soon. With that, I am out of here, guys. Be sure to leave a like if you liked the video. If you didn't, still leave a like because nobody's going to see that dislike. But like always, thanks for the love. Thanks for the subs. Peace.